my book besties, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Elizabeth, and we're going to do our 2023 book awards. So originally I had planned to do this earlier in the month, but life and I just didn't get there. But we're going to try to catch up, and I'm going to try to roll out several videos in the next week to try to catch up for what did not get posted in January. So these book awards are going to be my favorites of 2023, my least favorites, and then I also have my most disappointing. And then I have a few that I feel like I should have loved, but I listened to them on audio, so it's possible that I do love it. I just need to read it and not listen to somebody else reading it. So I'm going to go over those, and I will vlog those later in the year. I have a couple I've picked out that I'm going to reread and see how that goes. So let's start with those, because they're ones that are going to be at the bottom of my list, and we'll kind of do my bottoms and then go up. So 4 books that I read in 2023, well, I listened to on audio that I feel I should have loved, and I'm going to reread physically this year and see how it goes. These are not in any particular order, and I'm not even going to talk about the ratings with these because they varied from 2s to 3s. I just feel like I should have loved them. The first one is, and I think I have it here, because some of these I have in front of me, some I don't, is the Mindfuck series by St. Abbey. Everybody loves this book. I listened to the first 2 books on audio. I did not love it. I got bored. I couldn't really, I got lost in it, and it may just be because I was listening while doing other things and it didn't catch my attention enough for me to fully process what was going on. So I do plan, especially because I have it, to physically read this one this year and see if it makes a difference. Did I actually not like it, or did I just not enjoy the audio? And I say that because some books are just meant to be listened to, some are not. When I very first listened to for example, when I first listened to Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, absolutely loved it. I listened to it. Do I think I would have loved it as much if I physically read it? No. And this is why. It had kind of like behind the music vibes, and I feel like listening to it, especially because they had a different voice actor for each character, just gave the book it's like it was meant to be listened to. And I have heard a lot of readers say that they read it physically and didn't enjoy it, but loved it when they listened to it. So for that reason, the books that I feel, based on the synopsis and just that it's so loved, that I should have loved because it's a genre that I would have, or it's about something that I would have really, really liked, I'm going to give it another try. We're going to do second chances this year. So my first second chance is going to be Mindfuck series. Okay, after that, I don't think I have the physicals on me. I do have the physicals to these. I just don't have it in front of me. It's crazy. I have stuff everywhere, so I apologize, but I will put it up here. The second one is Binding 13. So I did not rate this really low. I just didn't love it the way I felt that I should have, based on what it's about. And when I first started listening to it, I was very into it. I was loving it. And it slowly tapered off for me. And I don't know if it's because I got, too busy doing something and just missed a few things, which I feel I did, because I did get confused in some parts. But I just didn't want to go back and restart it because I was already so far, into it, and I didn't know where I kind of got lost. So Binding 13, I do have actually the first 2 books. It's the Boys of Tommen series. I only listened to book 1, but I do plan to read physically and see if it changes my mind. So that's my second chance book. Third is Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. This was highly rated. A lot of the book talk or booktube people that I follow who really have the same taste that I do in books really loved Archer's Voice. I didn't love it, but I listened to it. So that's another one that I'm going to give a second chance to by reading it physically and, seeing if that changes my perspective. And then the last one is Flock by Kate Stewart. This is book 1 in the Ravenhood series. Now, I've heard that this series is life-changing, but that you actually have to read the full series to get an understanding of it. And maybe that's where it lost me. I only read book 1. There were some parts that really confused me, but I was so into it when I started it that I feel I should have loved it. But we're going to see. So with these second chance reads, I'm going to go back and reread them in 2024. I will vlog all of my second chance reads, and we're going to see if it made any difference. And I will give, when I do those, I'll talk about how I felt when I listened to it, the rating I gave, and then we'll do the physical and see if there's a difference. If there is, I've already got one in 2024 I listened to that I felt I should have loved, that I'll probably do the same thing with. Will I do it in 2024? I don't know. It may be a 2025 deal, but we'll see if we get back to it, if this works out. So next I have my bottom books for the year. Okay. So first, and I do not have a physical copy of this, but I'll put it up here, is Credence by Penelope Douglas. If you've watched my channel, I did a vlog about how I felt about Credence. Now, this does not reflect how I feel about the author, because I've read other Penelope Douglas books and I've loved them. And I actually have a whole nother 2 series or 1 series by her that I do plan to read this year. And I'm very excited to read. I just couldn't get into Credence. I said I won't get into too much detail because I do have a full vlog on it that you are welcome to watch. That way you don't have to listen to it here. It just wasn't for me. And it wasn't the content of it. It was just the way it was done. I didn't enjoy it. So Credence was the first disappointing one. The second one that disappointed me, or was it the bottom? I'm sorry, these were bottoms for me. That's Sick Love by Jessie Hall. Yes, I have a special edition. I got a book box that I did do another video on. It was a stalker / serial unaliver trope box. This did come in it. It is a beautiful cover. I love it. I will keep it. I do have a copy of all of her books. So this was the first Jessie Hall that I read. Everybody loved it but me. I mean, I feel that don't come for me, guys. This is just my opinion. And like I said, this does not reflect my feelings on the author, because I have read other books by her and I love them. This one for me, I didn't love it. I don't remember what I rated it. Like I said, I won't go over star ratings. Just know that these were 3 and unders for me. And 3s are still just okay. But the thing with this one is it was compared a lot to the Cat and Mouse duet. Arrow in this book, which is the main male character, was compared to Zaid Meadows from the Cat and Mouse duet, which I read first and really loved. I don't think, personally, that they really favor each other. I mean, there's a few things in here that were similar, but when it comes to the character, he was not at all, to me, like Zaid. And there are just some things that he did when it came to the main female character that I didn't like. You know, I know there are morally gray men. I love to read about morally gray men, but there's just some things that I feel the main male character just shouldn't do. But like I said, everybody has their thing, and a lot of people really loved Arrow and loved this book, but for me, it was one of my bottoms. Next was Hooked by Emily McIntyre. I did not care for this one at all, really. I haven't read any of her other books. This was the first one, and I don't know if I'll continue the other ones or not, but I had high hopes for this book, and maybe I went into it having my bar set a little too high, but what I didn't like about it is this is a retelling of Peter Pan, which I was excited about, where Hooked is not happy with Peter Pan. Of course, they're enemies, and he wants to seek revenge he wants to get revenge through Pan's daughter, which is Wendy, but her name's not Wendy in here. I don't remember what her name was in here, but essentially she's Wendy's character, and he wants to get revenge, and it's just, he gets revenge sexually, which, whatever, that doesn't bother me. It's the way that they immediately kind of ended up having feelings, even though he was kind of crappy to her, you know? And I couldn't get into it. And unfortunately, that was a bottom for me. Another one was Neon Gods. Neon Gods for me, I couldn't get into this one either, unfortunately. And I did have high hopes for this one also. I love Greek mythology. I love Hades and Persephone, and I wanted to love this one so much. I just didn't. And I think it was the way that they did the Greek gods in here. They kind of get replaced. You know, they switch out. Didn't really like that. Now the actual spice scenes, I didn't have a problem with those. It was just the story itself I couldn't really get into. And so unfortunately, this is another unpopular opinion that this one was a bottom for me as well. And then finally, because I'm doing 5, is The Last Word by Taylor Adams. This is a thriller. Earlier in 2023, I read No Exit by Taylor Adams and I absolutely loved it. I was sucked in from the beginning. I really, really loved that one. And so when The Last Word came out, which I believe came out in 2023, I had high hopes yet again, and it just didn't do it for me. It kind of dragged out a little bit, and then when it got to the thriller aspects of it, it just fell short. And so unfortunately for me, Taylor Adams, The Last Word was also a bottom. So those were my 5 lowest books, or what I thought was at the bottom for 2023 for me. Now we're going to talk about the most disappointing. So these were books that I had high hopes for, even though I did say that here a little bit on those. I had high hopes for. I really thought I would love it, and I didn't, and so I was disappointed. The first one we've already talked about. It was one of my rereads that I want to do, my second chance books, and it's Mindfuck by S.T. Abbey. This one was disappointing because I really thought I was going to love it, and I didn't. But we are doing a second chance with this one, so we will see if that sticks. Next was Flock, which we just talked about was another second chance, and that's because I'd heard this was such a good book. It was a tearjerker. It was life-changing. I only read book 1, though, and I did hear that you have to read the whole series, so we'll see if that changes. Next was Does It Hurt by H.D. Carlton. This one was a disappointing read for me because I loved the cat and mouse duet. And when I went into Does It Hurt, I wanted to love it too. It came out after, and I had a high bar set, and it just wasn't my favorite. I'm not saying it was bad. And again, does not reflect on the author because I love this author. In fact, in 2024, here in January, I did read her other book that I hadn't yet, which was Shallow River. So now I have read all of her published books. And I loved that one also. It was just this particular one for me. And I think what it was is that I went into it thinking it was going to be just as mysterious and spicy. And this one actually had more of a thriller aspect to it that to me just was kind of thrown in. I was very confused by it, and I think that the shark scene was very hyped up, and it wasn't as, it fell a little short for me. But again, that was just most disappointing for me. The last one that was disappointing for me was, let me get it, I have it here, Kid by Jessie Hall. I hate to say this because Hawk, which is the book that came out before Kid, and Kid is a character from Hawk that got his own story. I loved Kid in Hawk. I loved Hawk. In fact, we're going to get to Hawk later in these book awards. But Kid for me I was so excited about. I loved his character in Hawk, and I thought I was going to absolutely love this book. I thought I was going to like it more than Hawk. This book dragged for me. This took me months to get through because every time I picked it up, I just wasn't as into it, but I wanted to finish it. And so I was disappointed in this one because I thought I was going to love it more. And the thing was that it had a lot of back and forth and it dragged on. I felt like it was very repetitive. And I mean, look how long it is. I didn't think it needed to be this long because it was just a lot of the same things back and forth. I do love Kid's character. I love Kid's character. I just didn't love the way that the book was done, unfortunately. So now that we've got through those, let's talk about 3 of my top series. Now, this is series that had 3 or more books, or is going to have more. Like I might have read just 2 books, but there's a 3rd one coming out. So obviously I hadn't finished the entire series, but from what I've read so far, it has been a top for me. First is a thriller one. It's Frida McFadden's Housemaid series. I do not have the physical books on me, but I'll put them up here. So the first two that came out was The Housemaid and The Housemaid's Secret. And then I think the third one's called The Housemaid's Watching, and it does come out in 2024. I will read it. These were 5 stars for me. I went through them so quickly. Frida McFadden became my top thriller author of the year, which I'm just going to say those as they go on. Frida McFadden was my top thriller author. Really, really loved Frida. And I really enjoyed both these books. They were 5 stars for me. I want to read every one of her books. I've purchased several of her books since then and plan to read a bunch of them this year. Second was the Dreamland Billionaire series by Lauren Asher. So I saw in a lot of book talk and booktubes, a lot of people's favorite book in this series was book 2, which is Terms and Condition. For me, that was my least favorite, but I still liked it. So Dreamland Billionaires, there was 3 books. The first was The Fine Print, the second was Terms and Condition, and the second was Terms and Conditions, and the third was The Final Offer. So Fine Print, loved. That was number 2 for me. Final Offer was my favorite in this series. I don't know if it was just the characters, the story, but I really latched onto them. And then the Fine Print, which was book 1, was number 2 for me, and then Terms and Conditions was my least favorite of the 3, but I still really liked it. I do recommend this series. There's somewhat of a spin-off series, which is, I think it's Lakefront Billionaires, which Lakefront gets mentioned in Final Offer, and the first book is Love Redesigned. I have not read that yet, but I plan to this year. And then last but not least in my favorite series was the Hoop series by Kennedy Ryan. So I have book 1, and that's Long Shot. Book 2 was Block Shot, and book 3 was Hook Shot. This series had me in some kind of trance, okay? I read book 1 as a buddy read, and this is by Kennedy Ryan. If I didn't mention that, I don't remember. But I did this as a buddy read with some of my book talk girlies, and immediately picked up book 2 and then immediately picked up book 3. I read all 3 books in about 5 or 6 days, and they are kind of chunky. Long Shot does follow some domestic abuse, and so definitely check triggers. This book had me in tears, but I loved the writing. Book 2, Block Shot, followed a character from book 1, and it was more of like a, I want to say friends to lovers to enemies to lovers, because it had a couple who knew each other in the past and kind of had a second chance. And then book 3 was my least favorite of the series, but I did still enjoy it, and that was Hook Shot. And these follow professional NBA. These are sports. It's called Hoop series. Obviously, these are sports romances. The first one follows an NBA player, and like I said, the girl, she was being abused by her NBA player husband. So her husband was an NBA player, and then her, savior / love interest was also. Book 2 followed an NBA player and an agent, and book 3 follows, I believe it's the cousin of the girl from book 1 and another player. So these were lovely. I really, really loved these. I highly recommend. In fact, I've got a couple of Kennedy Ryans that I am planning to read for February of 2024. Okay, now let's get to my favorites. So my top 10, and these are in no particular order. And since we just talked about these, Long Shot and Block Shot. Those are both in my top 10, and I just talked about them, so I won't really go into them. But like I said, Hook Shot, which was book 3, was not my favorite, so I will just go with Long Shot and Block Shot in my top 10. Next was the Cat and Mouse Duet, which I have signed back here, but there's a bunch of stuff on it. I don't know if you can see it. It's some special editions, and I have candles and different things kind of standing around it, so I didn't want to pull it down. But this is Haunting and Hunting Adeline by H.D. Carlton. These books, I was so enamored with these books that I think about this daily. Okay, I think about Zay daily. I think about the book. I have bought merch. I have a little Zaid squishy, which I talk about in one of my Bookmas videos if you'd like to see that. And it was I think it's in like a bookish items video that I did. It was in the first few days, but I compare some things to this one. I love it so much. So Cat and Mouse Duet, it does have a novella called Satan's Affair. This has to do with a character named Sibby, and she is getting a duet this year in 2024 I'm excited about. I did not list Satan's Affair as one of my top 10 because it was just a novella, and I had some others in here that I wanted, this was just my top 10. So, but definitely read those all together. But both Haunting and Hunting Adeline were in my top 10. Next I have the physical for this one, Sick Fucks by Tilly Cole. This one actually may have been like my absolute top favorite of the year. As much as the Cat and Mouse Duet, had my heart. This one, it was just a little different. This, I will say, is the darkest book that I have read to date. However, it may have a contender of one I read in January, which I will talk about in my wrap up, but this one was pretty dark. So definitely to check triggers. It does have some pretty heavy themes in there, but I love the way it was written. It is loosely based on Alice in Wonderland. The main female character, she's obsessed with Alice in Wonderland, and she names her friends after different characters. The main male character, she calls him Rabbit, and he calls her his Dolly. And it's a heartbreaking story, and it is a story of revenge. It's not a romance, I would say. It's more of like a trauma bonding story, and there is some sexual scenes in there. Some of them have to do with abuse, so be careful with that if that is something that will trigger you. And some of them are just, like I said, traumatic. This is more of a trauma bonding than a romance, but a very good read. And if you've read anything else by Tilly Cole, like A Thousand Boy Kisses, if you didn't know it was her writing this, you wouldn't even know it was the same author. I mean, night and day with the writing, but beautifully written. Next, I don't have physically, but it was Big Nick Energy. I read this in December. It was a Christmas read. This book was just the sweetest thing I think I have ever read. It was a very cozy, just so sweet. Like, it's gonna tug at your heartstrings. It's gonna make you fall in love. You're gonna get little butterflies when you read it. And Big Nick Energy, it is I don't know if it's a standalone. I think it's a standalone in a series. The 'Tis the Season for Revenge. I did not read any of the other books. This was book 4. It's the only one I read. I do plan to go back and read the others though. But this is by Morgan Elizabeth, and this is I don't know if I want to say cowboy. He has a Christmas tree farm. More of a ranch type. Small town, and it's got a character who's from a previous book, which like I said, I did not read. But I did gather that she went through a nasty divorce. She's a single mom of 2 girls. And she goes on this Tinder date with a younger man. And they quickly find out that they are not made for each other, but that they want to be friends. He cares about her as a friend. And he invites her and her daughters to Thanksgiving dinner. And he's told his dad all about her and told his dad, like, I think, like, she's kind of your type. And the dad's like, whatever. But as soon as he meets her, he feels like he already knows her a little bit because of the way the son has talked about her. And he mentions to her daughters, it's Christmas time. He mentions Elf on the Shelf. And she's, like, upset about this because she doesn't really have time to do it. She's kind of avoided it with her kids. She just, I said time, money. And so he feels bad and decides he's going to give the Elf on the Shelf experience to her daughters, and it just unfolds from there. It is just super sweet and cozy. I definitely recommend it. Next, I do have this book physically. It's just around here somewhere because I have been trying to get another shelf. I've just been piling stuff places, but it is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This is book 1 in the ACOTAR series. As of now, I have caught up on this series, but the only one in my top 10, I'm going to say, is book 1. Book 1 really drew me in. I really loved it. That's not saying the rest of the series is bad. I did read the whole series and I do love this series. It's just that book 1 captured me more as far as my top reads for the year. I do recommend the entire series. I will say it's more on the YA side, at least for the first few books, and then it kind of gets a little spicier. But it's a fantasy. It's about fae. It's got some very lovable characters. It follows Feyre. Book one, it's kind of a love triangle-ish, I would say. And I don't want to ruin it if you haven't read it. I don't want to spoil it. I do talk more about it in my wrap up in the month that I read it in, and I can't remember what month, but usually I put the pictures of what I've read, or at least most of them, up in my thumbnail, so check that out. And then, of course, the one everybody loved, Fourth Wing. Fourth Wing was in my top 10. For me, it did live up to the hype. Fantasy, dragons, tension, banter. I loved Xaden and Violet. I really loved Fourth Wing. I read through it pretty quickly. I did buy merch for this one also. If I start buying the t-shirts and I start buying mugs and I'm saying the quotes, then I loved it. So Fourth Wing was another top for me. And then I've got two last ones, which I do have physical copies of. So one I did kind of mention when we were talking about my most disappointing reads. This is the one, which is crazy that book 2 of this, or like the spinoff, was disappointing to me, because one of my top reads was Hawk by Jessie Hall. When I was talking about Kid, which is a character from Hawk, being most disappointing, that's why, because Hawk was one of my top reads of the year. I loved Hawk. I loved this book. I read through it pretty quickly, and it is chunky as well. And I love Kid's character. Like, I immediately ordered Kid, was so excited to get it, and that's why it was disappointing to me. But Hawk follows, his name's Cameron Hawk. He went to prison for a little bit, and he gets out and goes to stay with his friend and his friend's girlfriend. Well, the girlfriend and him, her name is Nicole. He calls her Cole, and things just happen in this house, okay, between him and her and Patrick, and it's not a why choose, okay? It is not a why choose. I guess the way I said that made it sound that way, but no. Nicole is with Patrick. Patrick's kind of, I don't want to spoil it, but I will say you love him and then you don't, for various reasons, and Hawk is just kind of there. Now, Hawk is kind of like, you don't love him and then you do. So it is not a why choose. It is more of a love triangle. Forced proximity, boyfriend's best friend. So we have Hawk. That was one of my tops. And then last but not least, because these are not in any particular order, we have Captured by Lauren Beale. Captured me. This is a tromance, okay? Lauren Beale writes tromances. These are not romance books, so if you're looking for lovey-dovey, you're not going to find it here, but I guarantee you're going to have a good time. They're not super thick. Most of her books are not. In fact, if you want to hear more about Lauren, this is how much I love Lauren. I have purchased several of her books. I'm going to start doing a featured author series here on the channel, and she's the first one I'm starting with, where I will talk about different books by this author, and these are mainly indie authors. She is self-published. This book has also been banned, so if you don't have, if you read it all like I do, then this may be for you. It is a banned book, so you cannot get it on KU or anything like that. You can get it from Amazon, however, in paperback, or you can get it from her website, I believe. This is a book that has to do with captivity. Someone gets kidnapped. They go through horrific things. Parts of this book made me physically gag and ill, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. In fact, I think Lauren Beale said that writing this book, that happened to her as well. And if you've read it, then you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, you will know when you get to that part what I'm talking about. This book stayed with me. I think about this book. I talk about this book even to people who don't want to know about it. And I own almost every single one of her books now. I've read a couple more, but I have not gone through her backlog. One of my goals this year is to go through her entire backlog. So Lauren Beale, Captured, that is my last one. So those were my tops and bottoms of 2023. I know that some of my bottoms were very popular ones, and just don't come for me, guys. This is just my opinion. I'm not telling you not to read them. And like I said, some of these, it does not reflect on the author at all. I have read other books by these authors and love them. It was just these particular ones did not do it for me. So I will be doing a series where we go over those second chance books, and we'll see how those go. But let me know, what were your tops of the year? Were any of my tops your bottoms? Were any of my bottoms your tops? And is there anything else by these authors that you loved that I may not have loved the book that you recommend that may get me to love these authors? So I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching and being patient with me being behind. But I promise I'm going to catch up. Thank you. I love you guys.